The annual Patricia A. Hannaford Regional Technical School District annual meeting, which is tonight, February 12th. May I have a motion to nominate someone for moderator for our meeting, please?
I'd like to nominate Dick Cole, please.
I'll second that.
It's been motioned and moved and seconded to nominate Dick Thodo for our moderator for the evening. Are there any other names? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's all yours, Dick. Have at it.
Moving on with Article 1, we would take a nomination for treasurer.
I'm gonna be back.
Second?
Jane Beck has been nominated. Any other nominations? Those in favor of Jane Beck, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Jane Beck is our new, continues to be our treasurer. Nominations for clerk.
Nominate Linda Barrett.
Second.
Linda Barrett has been nominated. Any other nominations? All those in favor of Linda Barrett for clerk, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Linda Barrett is our new clerk. Article 2, to hear and act upon the reports of the treasurer and auditors of the district. What is your pleasure on Article 2? And could someone make a motion?
I move that
to-
we accept the reports of the treasurer and the auditors of the district.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to accept the reports of the treasurer and auditors. Discussion on Article 2. Hearing no discussion, those in favor of adopting Article 2, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You have passed Article 2. Article 3, to see if the voters of said district will vote to authorize its board of directors to borrow money pending receipt of payment from member districts by the issuance of its notes or orders payable not later than 1 year from date for the purpose of paying the sum approved by the voters. It's your pleasure on Article 3.
Do we, Dick, on this one, do we need a dollar value in this motion?
I don't think so.
The dollar value, I believe, is in Article 7,
Okay,
because it has to go to town meeting.
okay.
If that changes, then at least people have the warning here of what this was.
Yeah,
If we have to adjust that.
This
Okay.
is just the mechanics of
Okay.
moving the money.
Yep.
Move article?
Second.
Discussion on Article 3? Hearing none, those in favor of adopting Article 3, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You have adopted Article 3. Article 4, to see if the voters of said district will vote to authorize its board of directors to use funds in the Building and Equipment Reserve Fund for capital improvements and program equipment. Motion on Article 4.
Second?
Discussion on Article 4. Dana, did you want to say anything about the fact that there isn't
The Building Equipment and Reserve Fund, as you heard, has a dollar amount of 60, what did I say?
68.
Excuse me, 68,439, something like that. That's, as I reported in my superintendent's report at the last board meeting.
And so there's no transfer of funds?
There's no transfer this year. Our reserve was too low to be able to allow that. That's why it doesn't have the transfer of dollar amount.
Right. Further discussion on Article 4? If none, those in favor of adopting Article 4, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Article 4 is passed. Article 5, to see if the voters of said district will vote to authorize its board of directors to use funds in the Health Reserve Fund for expenses related to healthcare coverage.
Move Article 5.
Second.
Discussion on Article 5. Just no questions or discussion on Article 5?
Once again, there's no transfer because there is no sufficient fund balance to put more money into that fund, and I think that we actually are covered for this year because of the vote last year to expend the funds, but we should probably go through the motion because, and as of July 1, there'll be money that will have to go from our budget into that fund in order to be able to provide security and for the money to be expended from that fund. So I think that that's appropriate for you to take action.
Okay, further discussion on Article 5? Hearing none, those in favor of adopting Article 5, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You have adopted Article 5. Article 6, to do any other business proper to come before said meeting. Hearing none, I will read Article 7 and then entertain a motion to recess this meeting until the Australian ballot on March 3rd. Article 7. Shall the voters of Patricia A. Hannaford Regional Technical School District approve the school board to expend $3,864,752, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. This budget represents an 11.43% increase over expenses for the current year. It is estimated that this budget, if approved, will result in education spending at the Patricia A. Hannaford Career Center to be $25,503 per full-time equivalent student on a 6-semester trailing average. The projected spending per full-time equivalent student is 15.39% higher than spending for the current year. Can I have a motion to recess until March 3rd?
I'll move to recess.
Second.
This is a non-debatable motion, so those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, the meeting has been recessed until March 3rd. Now we will have informational meetings.
Sure. So I'll go over a few of the talking points that I used during my presentation at ACSD with regard to the budget. As Dick just mentioned, $3,864,750 is our budget, and that's a change. That is up $396,414 from last year. I gave a breakdown of our revenues, which come from state-based tuition payments, tuition assistance grant, transportation reimbursement, Perkins, salary support reimbursement, and miscellaneous revenues. And then the final category is tuitions. After we take out the revenues that are subtracted from the expense budget, the difference is what we have to raise as tuition. The amount to be raised this year is $2,018,916.88. And when you base that on 123.76 FTEs, our 6-semester trailing average, we get $16,314. When we add the state payment of $1,137,000 and divide that by a 6-semester FTE average of 123.76, we have 9,189. When you put those two together, 9,189 and 16,314, you get the total that Dick mentioned, 25,503. Any questions about how we arrive at that? For comparison, what I did, and I think I mentioned this at a previous board meeting, but I'll go into a little bit more detail, that the budget, by comparison to the last time that we had the approximate same number of FTEs, this year we have 147.83 FTEs currently in the building, which is over 400 students. It's 403 students exactly. The last time that we had that number as a semester average was back in 2013-14. The budget at that time was $3,602,773. That is $261,978 less than this year's budget. The reason I use that as a point of comparison is that what that means is effectively from year to year, it means that for to have a rise in 7.27%, it's approximately 1% a year since over that 7-year cycle. And I wanted to put that in perspective to show where our budget is this year. Okay, now we have been able to make had some efficiencies that dropped our costs previously, but as you heard from Josh at the board meeting earlier this evening, we run a razor-thin margin for our fund balance, and having less than $7,000 this year, we needed to build in capacity in several areas. Those areas that we identified were the health reimbursement arrangement costs, contingency and legal costs that would possibly present some exposure to us, and the BRF, transfer to the BRF, because that money has been depleted, but we haven't had a direct method of putting more into that. Other areas that we've added to are the construction technology, that was covered by grant money in year one, and now we have to build that into the budget. Health and health insurance plans, as a result of the change in the tiered system, we now have to offer a greater variety of tiered plans, and that has a cost associated with it, approximately $50,000. And for those who are listening at home, the HRA cost that we have been asked to budget for is $120,000. We're also restoring our assistant director to a full-time position. That has a cost of about $37,000. We have some insurance costs that have increased to a tune of $11,000. And then our program improvements, the rest balances about $81,000 for program enhancements, additional supplies, equipment that are needed for programs that are mostly pre-tech related, because we have a larger number of pre-tech students. I did a comparison. I showed a slide. I can't do that right now, but we are at or above where the Career Center was in terms of enrollment back in 2000. So we've actually surpassed some of the semester FTE averages. So, and we have also passed other points along the continuum from 2000 to now. So I wanted people to know that the Career Center is very healthy in terms of the number of students that we've been serving. To put it in comparison, in the past 6 years, the semester averages have fluctuated between 123 FTEs, a 6-semester average, 123 and 135 FTEs. We had a single semester high of 153 back in 2015, in the fall of 2015. Our current FTE count is 148 of secondary students, and we do have 2 adult students with a diploma who are accessing our programming. So that brings our total count in terms of those being served to 150. So we are very close to that 153 average, the highest in the last 6 years. Our low point was back in 2017 in the spring, where we only had 111 FTEs. I think you know that we've had some program changes. The computer science class was added last year, and that program has seen an increase in its participation this year. And our construction technology, which is brand new this year, is at capacity. As I mentioned to our partners, unlike general ed programs, decisions for CTE programs are based on industry demand and AOE approval. And we have to go through a pretty rigorous process for that. And our programs now are at or above, in response to one of the questions you had asked me, we're at or above our historical averages in all programming, which is good to know. Pre-tech programs have seen a particular surge in participation, and they're at all-time highs. And that's a result of partly making sure that our programs were equitable in terms of timing for all schools, and Mount Abe in particular has benefited from that coordinated schedule among all of our partner schools. Let's see. As I mentioned, programs must go through an extensive review process at AOE, and we follow advisory program boards that provide us with information and recommendations about starting or reinstating programs. And we use the statewide data from the McClure Foundation to help inform decisions about which programs we should be adding. I made a comment at the board meeting a little while ago that the question came up from the ACSD board about what might be on the horizon, and I talked about drone technology just off the top of my head. But there are several areas that we could see things happening, and then industry will make recommendations to us, and then we'll make adjustments in our programming. So there have been some programs over the years that have been eliminated as a result of either lack of demand or other reasons, interest. And so there is a fluctuation of programs. But right now I think we're appropriately sized and sector aligned for our programming.
Dana, could I interrupt you?
Sure, absolutely.
The other night at the ACSD board, a question was asked about if a program's at capacity, could we just add another section of it? So could you address that so that the general public understands that
Sure.
also?
That's an interesting question because some programs might be able to be expanded because they are heavy in equipment and heavy in space demands. But most of our programs, I can't. And the one that I used as an example was our construction technology. We have a limited amount of space, and we can't just add extra sections. We can have a program that goes from a one-year program to a two-year program, expanding in the same space because we would use morning and afternoon. But we can't just add additional sections of construction technology 1, for example, because we have no place for them to learn and work, unless we would perhaps create an addition out at North Campus. That was a joke. Anyway, because we just don't have the infrastructure to be able to add sections. Some of our classes, our pre-tech classes, have a little bit more flexibility, and we can adjust there. But most of our technical programs don't have that capacity. We can't put more students in the diesel lab, for example, and we can't just create another diesel lab. Same with the automotive shop. I don't know, Kelly, you might want to help me out on this, but with respect to agriculture, there might be a little bit more flexibility.
Yes.
Because we have a pretty big ag academy here.
Yes.
And if we shifted classrooms, we might be able to accommodate more students through creative scheduling.
Correct.
Because we have that capacity, it doesn't require a whole lot of extra infrastructure.
Correct.
But if we were doing like natural resources and heavy equipment, we only have a certain number of pieces of heavy equipment that are very costly, and we wouldn't necessarily be able to easily add beyond what is already accounted for, unless we went with, say, another instructor, which then would add more cost. And the two instructors could probably share times and locations, but it's not as easy to make an adjustment, either reducing or scaling up with the heavy infrastructure needs that we have here at the Career Center. Thank you for that question. Capacity of the Career Center programs are singular, and each instructor basically is a program, as you heard in one of our presentations tonight. So if we eliminate a section or a program or an instructor, we eliminate the program, and that offering is no longer there to meet industry demands as well as our local needs. And we currently have some capacity in some of our programs, but some, as I've already reported, happily, are at capacity, or in some cases beyond capacity. So, but we're always willing to work with our partners to collaborate more. In that area of collaboration, we are still working with all of our partner schools and meet monthly with administration to make decisions on scheduling and opportunities for students, sharing resources and so forth. And we're moving towards the CP, the Career Program 2, offering the IB offering. And as I mentioned at the board meeting when Nick called my attention to the omission in either of my reports for February or the annual report that I hadn't said anything about IB, I do apologize to folks that I omitted that, but it is very, we're very active, and the application is near being submitted. We're waiting for a few more resources from some of our partner schools to be able to answer questions in terms of what we have available for book, print, digital resources that can be made available to students so that our application can be complete. And I think we've gotten a response from one of our partner schools, and we're waiting on others. So once we get that together, we're going to do our final review, and we should be submitting that for candidacy by the end of the month. So I'll keep you posted about that. And like I said, we have standing meetings every month with our partner schools. And I made a suggestion to the superintendents when I met with them and a couple of business managers a couple of weeks ago, that in order to, in an effort to avoid the potential for last-minute surprises with respect to budget, that we could actually meet more frequently, and I could meet with them and tell them how things were shaping up, and they could tell me what their constraints were, so that we could have an understanding of what they're facing. One of the things that I did share with them is I'm on a work group at AOE for looking for a pilot for a different funding mechanism for CTE, which would actually take the costs right out of the ed fund and not have them pass through the ed spending. So it would not be an ed spending constraint on our partner districts, and they would not have to worry about a cost that would be fluctuating and beyond their control. So by having these meetings, I could update them about how we were, what progress we were making in that area. And one of the superintendents mentioned to me that they would be very supportive of that type of pilot program. So anyway, I want to assure you that we're trying to keep our lines of communication open with all of our partner schools so that they can understand, and we can understand their constraints and concerns, and they can understand our mission and vision better, so that we can work in partnership to serve all of the students of Addison County. That's it. Yes?
You talked about, you had a meeting and you had an opportunity to talk about the budget at Middlebury High School. I wonder if you have made...
It was in Cornwall, but for ACSD, yep.
So I'm just asking, have you made arrangements to speak with the Mount Abe District and the Defense District, and if so, when those dates are?
Mount Abe is scheduled for, I believe it's 7:30 on Tuesday, the 25th, after the annual meeting at Mount Abe. I think I'm first on the agenda.
You've already been to Addison Northwest, haven't you?
That got postponed.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, actually, canceled.
Oh.
So I'm going to reach out and see if that meeting should happen, because I feel that if I'm making a presentation to each district, that I should make every effort to present to them as well. So I'll be working on that.
Maybe you could put the PowerPoint up on the Career Center page somewhere so that
Absolutely.
people can view that and get some
Happy
more
to do that.
information on the budget.
Sure.
Is there a link for the report on the website too?
Which report?
Or the annual report?
Yep. And we have, sent out cards with a direct link to the report. I think you have access to that, but if you need me to, I can send an email just to show board members how to get to the, it's a public link. So, but it's up on the, it is up on the website.
Yeah, no, I meant for public access.
Yep, it's up there for public access. And we sent out, I don't know how many thousand postcards recently with a tiny URL so that they could just type that in or go to their browser and access the annual report.
Are there any questions? Comments? Josh?
Does your sixth semester average still have that 111 in it from FY17? When does that fall off?
After next, it's in next year's and then it falls off.
So next year's budget, it won't be in it, or?
It's in the budget for 21.
For 21.
For 22, it will not be there.
So you should see an increase in your.
We're hoping,
average.
yep. Yeah, so that's, and one of the things, since you mentioned that, one of the things that I did point out that I didn't have specifically in my presentation, but somebody asked the question. If we were just doing our per pupil average based on, for the budget for next year, it would be just barely 20,000, not 25,000. So there's almost a 20% decrease if we were just basing it on the actual number of students that we have in the building, that we are servicing in our programs this year. So, and we're hoping that that number will continue to rise. We're also we've looked at some preliminary numbers for the spring, and they are significantly above that 111 from a couple of years ago that we still have hanging on there. So we're hoping that that combination of a strong fall with a revised schedule and stronger numbers in the spring will help propel us into the future with a much stronger number of FTEs. But if we go with this pilot, FTEs won't be the basis for our funding any longer, and it will be pulled right out of the ed fund and provided directly to CTE. It would become an assessment on taxpayers, just like they vote on in all of our 17 towns. They would see a tax for CTE, just like they see for municipal and they see for K-12 spending. They would see a CTE assessment, which would be somewhere between 3 and 6 cents.
When might this go into effect?
2022. So it would.
Would they pilot before then?
Well, the pilot would have to be approved, so it would go into effect for the budget development for 2022.
Okay,
Because right now, we're under 2021.
right.
It's out there, but we're hoping that it has to go through several steps for it to be approved, but we're working with some very good financial people. And I have a meeting actually tomorrow at AOE to see what the next steps will be as we present to the powers that be at AOE. So.
Okay. Any other questions or comments or concerns? I'm so glad we have people here tonight. Thank you all for coming. Nick,
Yeah, looking at the FTE.
which
average,
page are you on, Nick? So everyone-
17, page 17. All the numbers have gone up very well, but Ogden Valley, White River, and Champlain Valley, those numbers are still very small. Is there anything we can be doing to increase those numbers?
That's a complex question. I have to give a simple answer that I don't think so. And the reason is because they are already served by other career and technical centers.
Right.
And students choosing a program that's not offered there, but is offered here, is really the only way. And generally speaking, that's our diesel power technology program. Because most other centers, I think there's only one other one in the state, you might know better than I, Kelly, that offers diesel power technology. So if they want that, then they would have to come here. And those numbers, I think it's a fairly popular program. The numbers in that program have grown. And so, for example, this year, we do have another student from Champlain, CVU, Champlain Valley, which we hadn't had in a while. So those, once again, those FTEs are historical ones, and it gets broken down over the course of 6 semesters.
Yeah.
So we could target or try to promote a specific program out there, but it would seem like it was poaching students, and I don't know how that would be received by other career centers. but-
CVU goes to Essex, so how does this CVU kid get here?
They have to provide their own
They have to
Well, they have to
transportation.
provide, I was gonna say, you don't send a
Just
bus
like-
for one kid.
So, for example, we also have some students coming from Otter Valley, because Rutland doesn't offer a diesel power technology, and they carpool. So,
What about reaching out to the homeschool community, if there's any homeschoolers that do
well,
high school?
so, homeschool, our numbers in home study students has increased over the last 3 years. So we're now even having more than we had last year. The first year that I came here, I didn't know much about how we got the word out to our home study students. Last year, we actually targeted, or for last year, we actually targeted them through a mailing, and we got connected with AOE, and they provided us with an opportunity to send them information, and then they sent it out to the home study program. And now the home study families are connected to us, and they are sharing among themselves.
Oh, good.
So they can join, but they are really, if they live in Addison County, they can access the Career Center directly, and they do. But to target home study students outside of Addison County, it would be the same constraints. They would have to be accessing a program that was not offered by their identified center. But we are working with the home study families, and we have some very strong supporters who promote our programs on a regular basis.
Cool. Josh?
This is maybe just an observation. So it sounds like you're pretty much at capacity for most of your classes.
We're at capacity
Is that what I
for,
heard you say earlier, I thought?
we're not at capacity for most, we're at capacity for some.
Okay.
And let me see, off the top of my head, I would say, if we count the pre-tech programs, 1, 2, 3 or 4 technical programs, and then on the pre-tech, we're probably looking at, well, we have multiple sections of a couple of those. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think we have 8 pre-tech sections. I would say that 6 of those are at capacity.
So if your max capacity, let's call it, you're at 147 right now.
Yep.
If your max capacity is 170.
170, that's probably about max capacity.
Whatever that number is.
Yep, on, not students, but on FTEs.
Right, FTEs. So you can only take 20 more FTEs, basically.
Right.
So as costs continue, even if you gather 20 more FTE students, however many students that takes, that's your ceiling, right? So your costs are going to continue to increase even if you hit that max capacity. So is there some thought process or planning at the board level to say, how do we address that next step? I mean, it seems like eventually these costs are going to be out of control because you can't add more students because you're going to be capped at the number of students you can serve. Your costs are never going to stop increasing,
True enough.
right?
Yeah, but on average.
Doesn't that, I don't know, is there some thought or
Well-
should there be some thought about how you expand?
Average.
Well, there is some thought about how we could expand, and we are working, the facilities committee is working on creating a little bit more usable classroom space. And that would provide a little bit more capacity in that regard. The question becomes, what does the future of CTE, Career and Technical Ed, look like, and how will we be able to shift that in terms of serving students, giving them meaningful training, and maybe expand the number that we can put in each program, because our heavy labs are limited to 16 at max. So right there we have a constraint. No matter what, those costs will, as you said, continue to go up. If we're looking at it purely from an FTE perspective, and FTEs are really kind of fictitious numbers because they're not based on anything. I had somebody at the meeting the other night say, well, why don't you take 403 and divide your cost by 403? That would be about 9,000 per student. I said, well, because statutorily we can't do that. But if we look at a different funding mechanism, then we would be looking at costs for supporting the program for all students in Addison County. And the way that we can expand is to take our programming into other facilities. So if we can replicate something in another facility, that gives us the space, and we could do something perhaps in Virgins, we could do something here in Middlebury, we could do something in Mount Aid. And we would place the instructors delivering CTE with experienced professionals in those locations. And then expanding the number of students that we could serve. On a proportional basis, we're probably still bumping up against that cap, because when we put an instructor in with 16 students, it's not like a math class where we can have 20 or 22 or 25 students, so we don't have quite that flexibility. But that would help with cost containment. Would it stop? I have a great idea for how to reduce costs for all. Since I'm on a soapbox and I've got a captive audience.
I'm sorry.
I'll say this. But we could take healthcare right out of the school system and have it be a social benefit that we would pay for and that would not go into the ed fund as an expense. We would carve out 15% of all of education costs to do that. By doing it the way that we have been, and although there might have been great intentions to take the collective bargaining out of the local level and make it at the state level, those costs have actually increased some of our expenses. So for me, that's really a social benefit, and other countries actually pay for that outside. They don't have to budget for healthcare costs in their ed spending. And so that would be, if I had an opportunity to write an editorial, which I may at some point, that's what I'd be asking people to do. Pay for it as out of a social welfare pot of money, and then not make it something that we would then have to have be borne on the backs of education. So you opened up the can of worms, I kind of just put them on the hook. Thank you, Josh.
Are there any other questions, comments? Allison?
So in terms of programming, have there been any thoughts given toward finance or data analytics, data science, metadata? I mean, it's the information of things and analyzing and how to get the most out of the information that people have. I know we have the computer programming piece.
Are you talking about offerings?
Right, yes,
Oh,
yes.
Most of our focus in that particular area has been looking at information technology and what we're doing in terms of offering the computer science class. And one of the big areas that's an extension of that is cybersecurity.
Yes.
So that is the area that we'd probably be looking at. That is one of those areas where we could probably have more than the average 16 students in a class, but once again, it would be dependent on a number of workstations that we have available. Certainly portability helps because you can go in multiple different locations to be able to do that. So if you have one-to-one devices, that can help. And we're nearly there at the Career Center for making sure that any student who would need a device has one.
Yes.
Could you speak more to how that information was gathered?
Which information?
Like the fact of having cybersecurity or IT as offerings?
So, there are a couple of things. One, AOE has identified certain areas that are up and coming, and they have someone, Oscar Aliega, who works with Jay Ramsey and looks at industry data and up and coming trends and tendencies. And they share information with us, and then they reach out and ask, who's interested in doing something like this. That's how Jake's program also got started. We did a survey of the community about what people wanted to see in terms of programming for the Career Center. And we had 2 programs that we were able to actually act on. One was the construction technology program, which was identified both by AOE industry and our survey in the community of over 300 residents that said that construction technology is something that we should be reintroducing. The third one, I can't remember what the second one was, but I think we were already offering that. The third one was information technology. And that was the one that we pursued with Jake in terms of offering information technology to students. So that process, information comes to us from a variety of sources. I'd say it's industry, it's education, and it's innovative trends that are happening across the country. We're also plugged into the network for higher ed and what trends they are seeing and what instruction they are delivering to students at the college level, and that percolates down to CTE centers nationwide. So that's another avenue that we have for gathering information. Did I fully answer your question, or is there?
Yes, thanks.
You're welcome.
To expand on Lisa's question, when you're thinking about industrial design and graphic design and that kind of stuff, user experience and user design and websites and social media and ways to pull information out, data visualization. It's kind of sort of the IT thing, but it's also very much embedded in what program you offer as well.
Hey, Josh.
So there's an opportunity for overlap there. Sorry.
Let this cat out of the bag, I guess. In early conversations with Porter Hospital regarding their needs, and had a very interesting discussion recently with one of the top administrators that works with all of the affiliated pieces with UVM, and they're looking for medical assistants, looking for surgical techs, which they currently train in-house, and would love to be able to move that out, and coding training. And the other piece of that is to, in talking with Len and continuing ed, is who's going to be in a position, hopefully, to certify these people, put them through any process they may need or any college credits. So that's been an interesting piece. The person I spoke with sees all of those sending institutions that UVM currently represents. And one of them would be in a New York affiliate that may be already having a program set up. So these are relationships I think that are ongoing, and they come in very strange ways. So Suzanne and I sit on a committee over there at the hospital where patient and family input is provided by our committee. So these are times when those things come up. So they're very open to having these, adding any more that they may need or that the other institutions, and some of them offer them in between, along with, for instance, our current phlebotomy program. That's kind of how that came through.
Right.
And as the LNA participants get certified, they're looking for other ways to move up in the ranks. And it isn't all about being an RN. And that's the nice part about having that input. And they're realizing that, and they're wanting to train more people in those areas. So again, very early preliminary conversation.
And what you're talking about is something that actually goes back to Lisa's question to a certain extent. I wasn't thinking about it in those terms, in terms of how we hear and institute programs. We are looking at what industry needs are and what types of credentials they're looking for. And so there's a movement towards identifying what are called stackable credentials that we can start here at the secondary level, and those can continue on either through adult ed or through higher ed, where they can pursue a pathway and that there are stackable credentials. One that comes to mind, and you made a reference to it, LNA, phlebotomy. The first thing that would be needed is a CPR within an LNA. So the first credential that you might be earning is a CPR credential, and then as you go through, you earn the LNA credential, and that can then be stacked into an LPN credential or an RN credential, and so on and so forth. So that there are multiple pathways for students to pursue to get additional training. And that can include formal college training, or it can be industry adult ed type of training, or continuing ed training. So those things are what we're trying to keep our finger on the pulse of.
Yeah, awesome.
And to add to that, you can also pay attention to what industry is saying higher ed does not meet, and
Right.
provide that. And
We had a good example of that with Alex
yes,
this
exactly.
evening, when he was talking about his experience since he finished his program here.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And so stackable things, certifications or whatever, can move you much more quickly along a pathway than sitting in classrooms for 4 years, 6 years, however long it takes you to get an undergraduate degree. That may not necessarily even provide you with a position in what you're studying.
And many of our programs offer multiple IRCs, industry recognized credentials. So, and sometimes students can pursue particular areas of interest, like ASE certification, there must be 25 different areas. We couldn't have them go through that even in a 2-year period, but they can pick which ones they're interested in, follow a pathway, and then go out into industry and know that they can continue that, either through their employer or through some online training. So we try to make that as accessible as possible.
Kim?
And to add that, Porter's concerns are also retaining help and keeping them local, and working with students that may be doing an internship with the LNA program and really like the institution and live here and would like an affordable occupation to sustain their ability to stay here. Unfortunately, the turnover, UVM has other, the main basis where they will pull people from it. So if Porter can expand some of these trainings, it will help them retain their personnel right here.
Anything else, folks? This has been a great conversation around career technical education. Hearing no more questions or comments or concerns. Information meeting is over.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all for coming.